Well. I just wanted to point out we had Tom Haberstroh. He came on. He was off the air. Or not. Don't be like, listen, you're better than Duncan Robinson. You're better than Duncan Robinson now. Don't do the Duncan Robinson.
Am I?
Of all people, yeah, you're better than that, Duncan. Come on,
you
Duncan.
were a little nervous when they went down and then came back, right? Like when it went to game 7, you were like, man, I gotta rethink.
So Tom Haberstroh, the floor is yours. Because when he came on off the air, he was like, I didn't say anything yet. I ain't say anything yet. So you got the mic, you got the floor. What would you like to say, Tom?
Told you so. And I am so glad you didn't have me on last week, because I would have been a lot worse last week, going up 3-0 against the Boston Celtics. And you know what? Like, I'm going to take a victory lap on this one. I said that Jimmy Butler is better than Jason Tatum in the playoffs, and I think he's a better player when it's the 16 games that you need to win a championship. And he proved that in this series, had a better series than Jason Tatum, and went in there in game 7 and won on the Boston floor. Now, I do think it's telling that we are sitting here on May 31st debating whether to break up Boston's big two, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. That's how powerful Jimmy Butler is. That he is going to go into Boston and win that series and create a storyline that these two guys aren't championship material. Because I'm sitting here telling you, those two guys, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, have gone to the conference finals in 3 out of the last 4 years. And what Jimmy Butler, by infusing this confidence in Caleb Martin and Duncan Robinson,
God.
has effectively ended the big two era in Boston, according to the analysts out there who want to break up this team. That is the power of Jimmy Butler.
No. That's not the power of Jimmy. That's not the. Okay, now listen. You can be great. You don't have to be graceful, but you have to be accurate. Okay, you don't have to be. I don't want you to be graceful. I want you to go ahead and gloat, but I don't want you coming up here saying that Jimmy Butler ended it. No, it's not Jimmy Butler. It is their own self-destruction. It is going down zip 3 to the Miami Heat. And Jimmy Butler was not responsible for them going down zip 3. It wasn't Butler. And by the way, can I say, was there a game 4 in this series? This playoff Jimmy, this mythical character. There was a game 4, right?
Had some stinkers.
Yeah.
Okay, game 4.
There was
a game 5.
Too. Yeah.
No, okay, but I'm saying, like, let's not exaggerate the magic of Jimmy Butler, who I think is 33 years old. I respect him. I think he's a really good NBA player. His resume speaks for itself as an individual talent. But at 33, I can't show you my ring finger. I'm going to show you my other finger, my other hand. Okay? He's right here. He's got as many rings on this hand as I do. So let's calm down, Tom, talking about the greatness and the majesty of Jimmy Butler. He ain't won a damn thing either, and he's 33 years old. And when he was 25 or 26, like Tatum and Brown, he wasn't as far in his career at 25 or 26 as they are in theirs. So what are you talking about?
Hey, I'm just talking about what we talked about last week, where I was getting booed off this stage for even fathoming, even considering the idea that this player, Jimmy Butler, is better than Jason Tatum as of right now. I'm not talking about Jimmy Butler when he was 26. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about right now. Would I rather have Jimmy Butler or Jason Tatum? I think he's a better player
than Jason Tatum.
I'm sorry. I still think it's debatable, Tom. I don't think Jimmy made that case for you in this series. And listen, I'm petty, so I would take the victory lap and gloat too. So I would do the same thing as you. But I'm just saying, honestly, that was really a series about his role players uplifting him. And he was awesome in the first couple of games. But it wasn't about Jimmy. Jimmy is the reason they lost 3 games in a row. He didn't show up. And he said that himself at the post game. He's like, if I'm better, we win. And that's true. Caleb is out there doing what he has to do. Duncan Robinson, everybody else showing up. And Jimmy, he got contained. Rob Williams, the length was giving him issues. Jason Tatum started coming in and doing his Jason Tatum elimination game stuff. and Jimmy had no answers. So to me, they both were inconsistent. It's hard to say that, one really outshined the other, but Jimmy won. He won the series. So I still a debate who the actual better player is between the two of them.
Fair. And I would say that Jimmy Butler had a Game 7 injury on the first play that rendered him useless out there, and he couldn't move. And so the numbers of Jimmy Butler actually outplaying Jason Tatum in the series, averaging 25, 7, and 6, with a pretty much a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And Jason Tatum has never been that guy. We remind ourselves of last year in the Boston series against Miami and against Golden State. Jason Tatum very turnover prone. However, I just wanted to know that Jimmy Butler was also dealing with an ankle injury this postseason. And so while we want to say, hey, the Miami Heat were gifted the Malcolm Brogdon injury, the Jaylen Brown wrist injury, the Jason Tatum ankle injury, Miami Heat didn't have any Tyler Hero, which brings me to my favorite stat of this series. Caleb Martin and Tyler Hero hit more threes in this series than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown combined. Tyler Hero didn't even play in the series, and Caleb Martin made more threes than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It is amazing what Caleb Martin did in that Game 7, and it really in this entire series. Caleb Martin looked like
should he have won Finals MVP?
I think he should have, and which would put at Jason Tatum at like number 3 in the MVP rankings for me. Jimmy Butler at 2, and then Caleb Martin at number 1. I understand why they gave it to Jimmy Butler, but Caleb Martin looking like KD out there off the dribble, hitting 55% from downtown, and just looking as confident as ever, running back and forth and playing all out on both ends of the floor. Caleb Martin was the story of this series. As much as I want to gloat about the Jimmy Butler prediction, that was the story of the series, is that Caleb Martin turned into the guy that I think Celtics fans wanted Jaylen Brown to be, is the guy that is confident, hitting 3-pointers, playing all-out defense, and the handle. I can't stress this enough. This dude was bounced from the Charlotte Hornets 2 years ago. 2 years ago, one of the worst teams in the league said, we want to go with Kelly Oubre instead. We're going to go away from Caleb Martin, and ended up being one of the best, if not the best players in the conference finals.
No question. He was a lot of fun to watch. He did a great job. The numbers in the series were really historic. You look at some of the guys who accomplished what he did, and it's a short list, and you look at those names, and it's a bunch of Hall of Famers on that list. And there's no doubt, we were talking about it before, Jaylen Brown was bad in the series. I mean, he was bad, shooting from 3-point range. Free throws, he missed some free throws in the series, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, what? It was just
he shot really 7 of 43 from downtown in the series. 7 of 43. Unfathomable what he was struggling from downtown. So I hope that's the risk. I really do. I don't think they should break up those two. I think, Natalie, you made some great points about potential trades and Jordan Poole and Kuminga. Interesting from the Warriors' perspective. I think they do that deal in a second. I don't know if Boston does, but I really think Boston is a Malcolm Brogdon injury away, a Jason Tatum injury away from this potentially being Boston again in the finals. And I think Boston fans do not lose that perspective. 3 out of the last 4 years in the conference finals and the final 4 in the NBA. I wouldn't break up the duo.
But you say 3 out of the last 4. Yeah, me too. I'm with Natalie. I do. I think at times, playmaking is a real issue for them. Just being able to calm down and run something. It seems like at times you wonder, do they really have an offense? When they don't make threes, they just really don't know what. They just keep taking threes. It's almost like a kid where you say, dessert is nice, but you're going to have to mix in a salad. You're going to have something else. And they just gorge themselves. They have no adults to tell them, no more chocolate cake, damn it. You got to do something else. They can't help it. Let me ask you this, though. You're saying all these wonderful things about the Miami Heat. I'm going to put you on the record again. Let's see if you can go 2 for 2. You called Miami over Boston. How about the NBA Finals beginning tomorrow? Nuggets, Miami Heat. Who you got?
So I love my guys in Miami. Dan Lebatard's show. You know, this is really hard for me to say. I think the clock is hitting midnight here for the Miami Heat Cinderella story. And I know that's going to put me in the parade of gas bags that they do on the show. But I think it's Denver's series, and here's why. Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics had no answer for that zone defense. Nikola Jokic is a one-man zone breaker. He can shoot, he can pass out of the high post, out of the low post. I just don't see how the Miami Heat are going to be able to defend with the zone defense that crippled the Boston Celtics offense in that series. I don't see it having nearly the same success as we saw in the Boston series. I don't see that working in the Denver series. Too many shooters. Jokic is too good. I think the Miami Heat are going to put up a great fight against Jokic. But to me, I think this is Denver's year. And I do not agree with the assessment that this would be the biggest upset in finals history if the Miami Heat pull this off. Even Vegas doesn't agree with that. You know, the Miami Heat right now are plus 320 in terms of underdog to win the series. That's 12th all time. And the 2018 Golden State Warriors were bigger favorites against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so was the 2007 San Antonio Spurs going against Cleveland. I do think it would be an amazing story if the number 8 seed Miami Heat win this whole thing. I don't think it would make it the biggest upset in history. I just think that the Miami Heat are much better than that 8 seed. And I think Denver, they only have 9 more wins in the regular season. Yeah, it's 1 versus 8, but only 9 more wins in the regular season. We've seen that before. Still, Denver, I think, wins the series.
Tom, do you think, and I agree with you. I mean, I think the Nuggets should be favored. But the way some people are just saying, like, oh, the Nuggets are going to handle them. It's like 5-game series. I don't think this is going less than 6 at a minimum. I think Jimmy Butler and Eric Spoelstra can get you 2 wins. I think they can definitely do that. And we talked a lot about the magic of Caleb Martin. Do you think, because I feel like if he can continue that going into the series, and I know there's this debate about whether Hero coming back helps or not, I just think there's some things that switch up the series and the look that could come into play that could maybe throw off Denver a little bit.
Certainly. And all those things, even if Caleb Martin is the same Caleb Martin that we saw against the Boston Celtics, it's still going to be an uphill battle because of the fact that the rest advantage that the Nuggets have, not just in rest in terms of they've had basically a week off, but also the altitude. The Miami Heat are coming off a 7-game series where they were battered. It's not like they were scot-free in terms of the injuries either. They're worn down too in that Boston series. So I think going into Denver at altitude against a rested team, that's a tall task. If it was Denver that was going a 7-game series and Miami had the home court advantage and the Miami Heat had some rest, whole different story. But the rest advantage, Jokic is the zone breaker, and the fact that they've got both ends of the floor playing at a high level now with Michael Porter Jr. looking like a real defensive player all of a sudden this postseason, I just think it's the Denver Nuggets season. And my guy, Ish Smith, the guy who's played on more teams than anybody in NBA history, him winning a title would be such a cool story. I think Denver, it's going to be their year, and I do think it's going to go long, like you said, Nat. I think it's going to go 6 or more, depending on how much that altitude really affects the Miami Heat.
So you don't think there'll be any rest for Denver? Oh, sorry, Michael. I don't think there'll be any rest from the long layoff.
I think the rust factor is something to think about, but when you're talking about the NBA Finals, we've seen it in history. Kevin Pelton at ESPN.com, he did a breakdown of teams that had this kind of rest advantage going into the finals, and it's exceedingly clear. It is not a rust question. It is a rest advantage. So historically, it's proven that teams that have this long layoff, this vacation before the conference finals and the finals, it's to their benefit, not a rust. I think the Denver Nuggets will be ready.
All right, a couple quick questions, then we'll let you go. One, how many teams has Ish Smith played for?
I think it's 14 at this point.
14.
Half the league, basically.
Yeah, pretty much half the league. And another thing, that's a big one. Now, here's a big question, and I want you and Natalie to weigh in on this. I know we've talked about it before, but I don't think I've gotten your take on it. It's Denver versus Miami. I think it's market 16 versus 18, something like that, Miami and Denver. If you were the NBA commissioner, how would you deal with it? Would you worry about it? Would you say, hey, great basketball will take care of itself? We got Jimmy Butler. We've got Nikola Jokic, 2-time MVP. I don't care that it's Nuggets versus Heat. I care about basketball. Or would you say, oh my God, I wish we had found a way to get Boston in there, or the San Francisco, Oakland market, or Los Angeles, just because I got a league to run. I'm running a business too. I'm concerned about it. How would you handle it? How do you think the commissioner's office is looking at this finals matchup from a ratings perspective?
Well, we just saw, I think, 12 million people watched the Celtics and Miami Heat Game 7, which was, I think, one of the highest numbers we've ever seen in the NBA. Outside of the NBA Finals. People are really into this Jimmy Butler story. They're really into the Miami Heat underdog story. The issue is the Boston market is huge and Denver is nowhere near that. And there's not as much storyline of Jokic and Jimmy Butler. We do have that fight, the Morris brothers and the Jokic brothers. I love the idea of having this like WrestleMania Royal Rumble at the NBA Finals and that backstory between Marcus Morris and Nikola Jokic, but they don't play for the Heat anymore. So it's a little bit, they got to come up with an underdog angle for both teams, which is kind of hard because Jokic is, I think, box office material as a basketball player. But we talked about this with Nate Jones, who reps a lot of NBA players on the Basketball Illuminati podcast. It's not like Jokic wants to be marketed by the NBA. So he's got to do it in the NBA Finals on the floor. And I think that's the issue is off the court, Jokic hasn't been that guy. And maybe in the NBA Finals here, he will become a household name. But I will say, the Miami Heat did just put up huge ratings numbers in the Eastern Conference Finals Game 7. So maybe Jimmy Butler is catching on with the national audience. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's funny. I just talked about this on my podcast as well. But as far as the commissioner, to the question you asked, I think they're concerned about it. I don't think there's any way around it. I don't think it should be such a triggering discussion, though. People get really defensive about it. And it starts to be like you don't appreciate basketball because you don't think the ratings are going to be good. But if you look back at the history of the league and the teams that have had big ratings, the people who have been the faces of the league, it speaks a little to what Tom just said. It's not just that they were great players on the court. They had an it factor, a Beyonce, like Kelly and the others are amazing, but there's an it factor that comes with being that superstar. We find them interesting. They're personable. They're charming. There's something. And Jokic could be all those things. Sometimes I think he's sort of like Klay Thompson. He's unintentionally funny. But like in all of these post games, Mike Malone has been the most interesting to me, right? Like with everything that he's saying. And so he could turn into that, but he lacks a certain appeal, I think, in terms of outside of the basketball court and maybe even sometimes on the basketball court in terms of his play style and what people like, right? Like people do. Steph was unique with the 3-pointers, but people like the Ja Morants, the dunks, the this, the that. And so I think the league should go in as much as possible in trying to market this and hype this up. But it probably won't fare as great as some of the others. I don't think it will be as bad as some people are predicting it to be. I think it's going to fall somewhere in the middle. I think that the big ratings for the Game 7 had to do with it being a Game 7 and probably more about the Celtics just because they are a very large fan base, much like the Knicks and the Lakers. But I think that's why it was a Game 7 and those also tend to have like better ratings.
See, I knew you guys would give great commentary on this. Tom Haberstroh, always great to have you. Thank you, brother.